mean, and my estimate would be, a little more uh, aggressive than that, but it's not the sort of like we're all going to die in 5 years stuff. That's obviously BS. Um, but I mean, my view is like if you just look at sort of the parts per million that increments every year, you get sort of 2 or 3 parts per million every year of CO2. Uh, y- I mean, I think some of that it's problematic if it accelerates if you start going from two or
Right.
three to say five, and then there may be some situations where you get just a step change increase in the CO2,
Hmm.
um, and I think we don't want to get too close to 1,000 ppm because like that's actually makes it uncomfortable to breathe. Like just existing in 1,000 ppm CO2 is uncomfortable. That's like that's considered like an industrial hazard.
Right.
Just so it's that's actually you start getting headaches and stuff. So it's even without global warming, it's not comfortable to live in. So you don't want to get too close to that. But I mean, I think we've got. I think we want to just move over and like, and if I don't know, 50 to 100 years from now, yeah, we're I don't know, mostly sustainable. I think that'll probably be okay. Um, so it's not like the house is on fire immediately, but I think it is something we need to move towards. And on on balance, it's probably better to move there faster than slower. But like I said, without vilifying the oil and gas industry, and without causing hardship in the short term. I think this can be done without, people can still have, a stake, and they can still drive gasoline
Sure.
cars, and it's okay. It's like it's not. I don't think we should vilify people for it, but I think we should just generally lean in the direction of sustainability. And I actually think solar is going to be a majority of Earth's energy generation in the future, and it's certainly trending that way.
Hmm.
And so you get the solar power, combine that with batteries, so because obviously the sun doesn't shine at night, and then you use that to charge the electric cars, and you have a long-term sustainable solution. And that's what Tesla's trying to move things towards, and I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard. But when you look at our cars, we don't believe that environmentalism, that caring about the environment should mean that you have to suffer. So we make sure that our cars are beautiful, that they drive well, that they're fast, they're sexy. I mean, they're cool. In fact, literally, I mean, the sexy joke, Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Y spells out sexy. It's probably the most expensive joke out
Right.
there. Um, but I don't know, I like cheesy humor, so, um, but I'm a big fan of like, let's have an inspiring future, and
Yeah.
let's work towards, a better future, and we can do so without demonizing
Right.
people.
I'm okay.
You know,
It's very interesting. You use the word global warming, and today they use the word climate change because you have some places that go up, and so they were getting themselves in a little trouble with the word global warming because not every place is warming. Some places are going the opposite direction. But 5 countries and getting more. China is much less than us right now, but they're going to catch us sooner than people think. They're way lower. Russia and us are number one, and I mean, we're sort of tied. And China is far behind, but they're developing at a level that you're not surprised to hear very fast. They'll end up catching up, maybe even
yeah,
surpassing. But to me, the biggest
yeah,
problem is not climate change. It's not, and everything's a problem, but it's degrees. To me, the big problem is the nuclear power. The power of nuclear is so great. You have to, because this is no longer army tanks going back and forth and shooting at each other. This is
yeah.
a level of destruction and power that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah, and actually, there's the bad side of nuclear, which is a nuclear war, very bad side. But there's also, I think, nuclear electricity generation is
Absolutely. You're
underrated,
right.
and it's actually, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. Um, and if you look at the injuries and deaths, caused by, say, I mean, I'm not trying to pick on coal mining, but just any kind of mining
Right.
operation, and there's a certain number of injuries and deaths per year. And you compare that to nuclear. Nuclear is actually way better. So it's underrated as a as an electricity source, and I think it's something that's worth reconsidering. But there's so much regulation that people can't get it done. So that
Maybe they'll have
sort
to
of
change the
have it,
name. The name is just, it's a rough name. There are some areas
yeah, it's a rough
when
name.
you see what happened in,
Good, bad
right,
branding. The
we'll have to
branding's rough.
rebrand it. We'll have to give it a good name. We'll name it after you or something. You know,
No, I
no, it
don't
has
think
a,
so.
hey, it has a branding problem. You know, when you see what happened in,
It does have a branding problem.
when you see what happened in Japan,
Like people were asking me in California, are we worried about like a nuclear cloud coming from Japan? I'm like, no, that's crazy. It's actually it's not even dangerous in Fukushima. I actually flew there and ate locally grown vegetables on TV to prove it. Um, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's
right?
it's
Well, that's
really
great.
not
That's great.
something that
That's
um,
great.
so it's not as scary as people think, basically. But
Yeah.
um, let's see. I mean, are there some other topics we should touch on? Oh, like lawfare. I think
Well,
we need to be concerned about.
what they've done to
Um,
this country.
obviously,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we just won the big
I mean,
case in Florida. One of the top people from the Justice Department went in, ran Manhattan, ran the state. The Letitia James deal was run by a person from the Department of Justice, Biden. They've never done this before,
sure.
and they set up a very bad precedent. It's called lawfare, warfare.
Yeah,
It's a terrible thing, and never happened in our country. It does happen in banana republics and third world countries, but it's never
yeah.
happened. And
It's important for the public that may be listening to this to look at Kamala's track record, before the last like month, and say, is that a track record you agree with? And I think if you're an independent moderate, you definitely would not agree with it, because her behavior has been far left, and we're seeing just an overnight propaganda attempt to rewrite history and make it sound like Kamala's moderate when she in fact is not moderate.
well,
Um, so I
her
think that.
running mate approved, signed into legislation, tampons in boys' bathrooms. Okay, now
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
all I
that's
have
weird.
to hear. Tampons in
That's
boys'
weird.
bathrooms, and that means she
Yeah,
believes in that too. I mean,
yeah, it's not that's
she
not
picked
okay.
this guy because he was the closest to her. A lot of people thought she'd pick sort of the opposite, but she picked an anti-Israel radical left person. But she is far worse, they say, than Bernie Sanders. If we have her as a president, if we have a Democrat at this moment as the president, I don't think our country can survive.
I think it's a massive. I think we're in massive trouble, frankly, with the Kamala administration, and that's my honest opinion. And I think really it's essential that you win for the good of the country for this election. And I mean I'm just stating my opinion. Now you may have seen this, but I got a letter from the EU Commission like saying to not have disinformation on the like during this discussion that we're having, and there's a lot of attempts to do censorship and to force censorship even on Americans from other countries. And um, what do you think about that?
Well, I know the European Union very well. They take great advantage of the United States in trade, as you know. We, through a different forum, NATO, we protect them, and yet, if you build a car in the United States, you can't sell it in Europe. You just can't sell it. It's impossible. The same thing with our farmers. Our farmers find it very difficult to do business. You know, we have a deficit with them of $250 billion, which people don't know. It sounds so nice, the European Union, but let me tell you, they're not as tough as China, but they're bad. And I let them know it, and that's probably why they notified you. No, they don't treat our country well. We defend them, you know, with Ukraine. So we're in for 250 billion, and they're in for about 71 billion, and they have the same size. It's if you add up the European nations that in terms of an economy, it's about the same size. When you say as us, and they're in,
Yeah,
and they're in much greater risk. I went
yeah,
in and I said, you
yeah,
got to pay up. If you don't pay up, we're not going to defend you any longer. I took a lot of heat, but you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in. And,
yeah. I think a lot of the public isn't aware of the fact that the United States pays a disproportionate share of the NATO expenses,
and then we get
even though
taken
like
advantage of on trade. So think
Yeah,
about it.
well, I mean, the point of NATO is defending Europe, and it's it's like then okay, well, why is the United States paying disproportionately more to defend Europe than Europe? That doesn't make sense. That's unfair, and that is an appropriate thing to address.
Well,
Um,
when you talk about
so
cost cutting and savings and everything else, I was talking about the difference from the people within and the enemies on the outside. In many cases, the people from within are more dangerous for our country than the Russias and the Chinas. If you have a smart president, you're not going to have a problem with them. You're going to do things.
yeah,
Now, they've taken advantage
yeah,
of us
absolutely.
incredibly, but you're going to do things with the right person.
Yeah, well, I think it's obvious that you're a believer and an advocate of free speech because during your first term as president, you were attacked relentlessly every day, often very unfairly with with false attacks, and you didn't try to shut down the media, you didn't try to inhibit their freedom of speech, and I think that says a lot.
Well, the good thing is that you and I have, and some people, very few, we can get the word out. Although sometimes it's hard because they don't want to print it. Like we're having a great conversation right now. Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't because she's not
No.
smart. She's not a smart person, by the way. She can't have this conversation. And Biden, we don't even have to talk about it. I mean, he couldn't have this conversation. He would have given up on the first half of a question. He would have walked out. He would have said, "Where am I? Where am I going?" So anyway, but
Yeah,
no, he wouldn't have this.
that's true.
Not a lot of people would have this conversation, but we cover a lot of territory. But the beauty is that we can have a conversation, and
Yes, you
I'm
can actually
able
have a
to get
conversation.
it out without because I get treated unfairly
This
by
is
the
a really
press.
big point. You can actually have a conversation with you,
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
and you can't have a conversation with Biden or Kamala. It's like not it's not possible.
That's true.
Um,
It's
so this is like talking to an NPC.
no.
So it's just
Well,
impossible.
but think of it. We need a man or person who's unbelievably sharp in order to stop all the nuclear danger and all the dangers that I'm talking about. And I got along with all these. I got along with Kim Jong Un. We had dinner, we had everything, and he really liked me, and I got along with him really well. By the way, he's the absolute boss over there. A lot of people said, "Oh, do you think he really?" Let
That's for
Let me
sure.
tell you, I saw things that you don't want to know about. He is the boss. But we had a good relationship, and he doesn't like Biden. He considers him a stupid man. He said he's a stupid man. Well, at least he speaks his mind. But in this country, you're not sort of allowed to say it. But I guess you are. You should be allowed to say it if
Yeah,
it's true. But we need smart people, and we need people that have an ability to lead. And she doesn't have that ability. Can you imagine? Now
yeah.
Chairman Xi very well. Can you imagine her and him negotiating, or
No, it's
even
silly. It would be
standing
silly.
together? It is the whole concept
Yeah,
is ridiculous. She is terrible. She's terrible. But she's getting a free ride. I
it
saw a
would.
picture of her
Yeah, yeah,
on Time Magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing, and
yeah,
actually,
yeah.
she looked very much like our great first lady, Melania. She looked, she looked, didn't look,
Yeah.
she didn't look like Camilla. That's right. But of course, she's a beautiful woman, so we'll leave it at that, right?
Yeah, well,